Amanda Collins, I've been wanting to interview you for a while because I know you personally and I know you do a lot of stuff. You live in two worlds. You are both a group fitness instructor and you're a personal trainer, which I think you bring a lot to this conversation that I want to have with fitness professionals. So, right off the bat, what group fitness classes do you actually teach?
I like to joke everything but Pilates. And I do have that training in my cart from one of the companies that I train with. I teach TRX, yoga, Zumba, aquatics, a lot of the Silver Sneakers senior classes, bar, kettlebells, body pump, the list goes on.
Is there a misconception about group fitness instructors that you've encountered, maybe people should know about?
I think that people think we get paid to exercise. And well, yes, we're getting paid and we're exercising at the same time. It's not necessarily the workout that we would do for ourselves. Sometimes, especially if we cover a lot of classes, we end up overtraining and not necessarily focusing on the areas that we need to focus on for our own fitness. And we're taking time out away from our exercise to help make sure that the people in class are doing it properly.
That's a really good point. You are working out, but this is in addition to your normal workout. I've often thought that there were some maybe potential injuries in group fitness instructors from overtraining. Is that something you've seen in others?
I've seen it in myself. I strained my hip flexor a couple of years ago. I had to cover two bar classes on top of mine, and that's very heavy on the hip flexors when you're lifting your leg up. Yeah, and it kind of sometimes will still spasm on me if I spend a long time seated.
About hearing problems. Some have told me about that in classes where the music is blasting and you're right there.
I'm laughing because I'm saying what a million times a day. I also have a little auditory processing problems from the ADHD, but yeah.
I have my own opinions on this, but what do you think is harder to do, group fitness classes or personal training?
I think personal training is much harder. I think,
Really?
well, it's not my personality to stand over someone and tell them what to do. I like group exercise because we're all in it as a team and I'm in the struggle with them. So if we're having to do like 32 pulsing lunges and they hate it and they're whining about it, I'm whining too. I'm like, look, I'm right there with you. I know it burns. When it's personal training and I'm standing there and they're doing it, I feel a little mean and that's just not who I am. And then there's not all of that energy to feed off of. When you've got, 30 people in a room working towards the same goal, we all feed off of.
That's an interesting perspective I hadn't considered. 'Cause I would just take the opposite. I would think your personal training, maybe you're working one-on-one or one-on-two. The most I think I've done recently is 3 at one time. But you could be in a class with 30 or 40 people. Some of them are very fit like yourself, and others may be at the other end of the spectrum. And how do you juggle modifying that program for all those people?
That's challenging because you'll have to show like the middle level and then the more advanced option and the lower option. And, people have different learning styles. Some people learn by listening, some people learn by watching. So if you have someone who's a visual learner and you're saying to them, you can stay at level 0, but this is what it looks like if you want to take it up a notch, and they're a visual learner and they're not ready to take it up a notch, they're still going to try that harder version because they're going to do what they see and not what they hear. So you sometimes will have to take it down even though there are others who are more willing to do the option.
Do you know ahead of time who's taking your classes, or do they just walk in and
They tend to just walk in. I know who my regulars are, but nobody signs up. You just show up.
do you have any thoughts or words of wisdom for people who want to take a group exercise class but never taken one before? My first instinct would be, for instance, if you've never done this before, go up to the instructor and say, hey, I'm Bob, I've never taken your class before. By the way, I broke my leg 6 months ago, or something like that, so you knew what was going on with them.
I wish people would do that. I have to deduce what their issues are watching them. We have this sweet little man at the senior center who I know he has a frozen shoulder because the first time we did this, he went so I wish people would let me know ahead of time because I could tell them, hey, we're going to be doing this shoulder exercise. That might be contraindicated for your situation.
Right.
So I would love to know ahead of time what's going on, and especially with classes like spin. I need to help you set up your bike. You can't just jump in if you've never done spin before.
Right. Are there any directions on the wall or the door before they walk in to say, hey, introduce yourself to the instructor or anything like that?
No.
See, to me, that is just challenging for group exercise instructors, because with a personal trainer client, I know who these people are. I have them fill out a health history questionnaire. I know what their problems are before I even meet them. You don't.
Yeah, we're going in blind.
you're flying blind, and that's why I always think group fitness instructing is much more challenging, and it's something that I don't know how the fitness industry addresses this. I have my own thoughts, which nobody wants me to say it, but I will since I'll just say it. I think everybody should have to do at a minimum a physical activity readiness questionnaire before taking a group exercise. 7 questions, you answer yes to any of them, you go to the doctor first and get checked out.
Yeah, that would be a great idea.
And I don't think anybody does a PAR-Q. And that's scary and again, my heart goes out to group fitness instructors because again, you guys are on the front line because if somebody does fall off a bike or whatever, you're literally the first person who's going to be there. So it's definitely something that I think about when I watch people doing group exercise classes because I pass by your class at the Y and you're teaching in Delaware County, Pennsylvania at a couple YMCAs, right?
And I also teach at some senior centers for Bayada.
Fantastic. Oh, that's really good. What's the difference between teaching at a Bayada versus a YMCA? Do you notice a difference?
Well, the age, first of all. The average age at the senior center is 89. So it's completely night and day from the group exercise classes that I teach.
Do you remember your very first class?
Oh,
What was that like?
absolutely. It was a Zumba
Yeah.
class. It was a Friday night at the Y. I was literally sick to my stomach. I was so nervous. And I couldn't, like, there was like whooshing in my ears. I couldn't even hear if I was on beat or not.
But you got through it.
Oh, yeah. The music
Yeah.
helps.
Would you go back to yourself back then and say, hey, Amanda, don't do this? Was there anything you would probably tell yourself to do or not do in that if they're teaching that very first class?
I would tell myself that I didn't need to be that nervous, that they're not judging me. Because I think one thing I've learned is like, don't trust the faces you see on people when they're exercising. Some people look very angry when they're focused.
Yeah, I guess they would, wouldn't they? And you bring up something good. Don't judge me. That's something I hadn't thought of before. I mean, you're up there in front of people you don't know, and what's going through your mind? What do they think of you? And that's an interesting thought that I'd never considered before. I wonder how many in group fitness instructors encounter that.
Well, when I started teaching, I was still on the heavier side because I was like, I had just started my fitness journey and I was like, this is great and I need to share this with other people. But I was not in shape yet. So I was very afraid that everyone was like, oh, this class isn't going to get me in shape because she's not in shape. And then when I got really thin, I found I had the opposite problem. People were like, oh, sure, you can do that, but I can't do that.
Yeah, I've seen and heard from both sides that, but mostly people who say the second part. I don't think I can do what he or she is doing because they have, six-pack abs or whatever, and I'm, 180 pounds or whatever, something like that. But that's an interesting thought. I've always thought that fitness was a big tent and had room for everybody. But I have heard from a number of people over the years who have said, hey, I want to be a personal trainer, but I want to get in shape first. I think the average weight of a woman in America, and don't quote me, is around 160 pounds now. So for someone who wants to try to lose, 20, 30 pounds, I think it works better for them if the person can identify with them. I don't know if everybody would agree with me on that, but that's my own impression. So for the person who wants to be a group fitness instructor, I would say just jump in, get certified, and start doing it. I think that would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
How do you build a community in your class? Because you've got a whole bunch of people, different walks of life and different fitness in your classes for the most part. Is there a way in which you can build community with them to keep them coming back so they can continue to stay fit?
So a couple of things we do. A lot of my classes where the format is more free, we'll do a circuit week every now and then, where everybody gets a partner and there's 2 people per station and they get to know each other. And there's always like one station that's a big challenge, like flipping the tire. And especially when it's all women, it's amazing to me the community that's created when, especially like the most petite or the oldest person in the class throws that tire over and the whole class is so excited. And everybody always says, oh, I didn't think I could flip that tire. So it's like we all have a common goal and everybody's proud of everybody else. And it brings everybody together.
That's fantastic. For that person who's watching us now who's saying, hey, I want to do what Amanda does, I want to be a group fitness instructor, do you have any tips for that person on how to go about doing it?
So take as many classes as you can, find the instructors that are, that know their stuff, that know how to attract a following, and go take their classes and learn from them, and go to a really good quality training like AAAI. Am I allowed to give you guys a plug? But yeah, you go to a really good quality training that teaches you the stuff. I really like a couple of the programs that I teach that I felt like really prepared me are Zumba and all the Les Mills programs, but I specifically teach body pump because Zumba gives you the choreography, but you don't have to use it. They teach you how to come up with it yourself. Body pump gives you the choreography, but they also teach you how to coach it. So those are two programs that I went into feeling completely prepared. Whereas some of the other programs I teach, I had to come up with it myself. I had to come up with what to say. And I would go to other instructors' classes and take little tidbits of what I heard from them. So just learn as much as you can.
Are there any online resources for group fitness instructors where they can get together, say online, and say, "Hey, I'm having this problem. What can I do?" And other people chime in?
I found a lot of Facebook groups by like the format that I teach. Like there's an indoor cycling instructors group. There's Les Mills has groups for their cardio classes, their strength classes, and it's sorted by the type of class. There's a lot of Zumba network Facebook groups. So I don't know if that there's one out there just for group exercise in general, but there's a Facebook group for everyone.
When I interviewed Dane Robinson, he's actually the keynote speaker at the AAAI Atlantic City Convention. He's a group fitness instructor, and he mentioned something called, he has this protocol for getting people into your class, and I think he used the phrase exertainment, where you take cues from Hollywood, which I just thought this was genius. All movies, all TV shows, they've got a hero, they've got a plot, they've got a task they've got to complete, and there's a resolution. And he suggested people frame their classes around like what you see in a Hollywood movie, and I thought that was just genius.
That is.
I don't know how common that is, but for me it was interesting. So when I look at classes now, I'm looking at them differently. So you've done a lot of classes, you've had an awful lot of people, thousands obviously in your classes over the years. Have you ever had a class where somebody was just being disruptive? I have other words that I want to say, but I won't. This is a G-rated interview. Somebody who was doing something that maybe they shouldn't have been doing, and they kept doing it. Did you ever face that situation where somebody was just like getting out of hand, doing something weird that they shouldn't have been doing? And if yes, how did you deal with that?
We had a gentleman with Alzheimer's who was saying inappropriate things to me while I was teaching. I sent one of the class participants out. She got the branch manager who basically came in and babysat him.
That's definitely a great way of dealing with that. And that person stayed in the class for the entire time, monitoring the individual. One of the things I remember when the pandemic hit is that you hit the ground running. You jumped right on the virtual fitness class thing. I mean, it was within days. I saw you, it looked like in your living room with kettlebells and stuff like that. So and you may still do this, virtual training as well. Is there a difference between being in person, teaching the class, and you doing it virtual?
Virtual was so stressful because you can't check people's form. You got like an elbow in the screen and that's all you see. And sometimes people have their thumb over it and I think I'm seeing something inappropriate. You have no idea what's going on. And then, until I figured out how to make myself the main screen the whole time, we'd have, any noise in the background steal it because nobody was staying muted. It would steal the main screen every time somebody would make a sound. It was very, very stressful. I did it for at least a year after, but once I got back to my full schedule at the Y, there's just no time to get home and get the camera set up and continue with that.
Yeah, I think you definitely were one of the first implementers that I saw popping up on Facebook. You were like, wow, you just like, this isn't going to stop me. I'm just going to do this. Like,
yeah, I was using Facebook Live and I didn't know that Facebook flipped the video. So I'm mirroring my class as I always do. Like I say right, but I go left so that they can look and just follow. And my mom is in the comments going, "That's not your right, sweetie."
That's pretty funny. Yeah, wow. Well, the pandemic taught us a lot about online stuff.
Yeah, me neither.
For that person who is certified, who's about to take their first class, is there like a checklist that you think they should go through on things they should think about before they walk into that class, and questions they should ask themselves, any kind of internal dialogue?
Definitely my first advice to new instructors, always pee first. Whether you think you have to or not, go hit the bathroom before you teach class. My first year teaching, I had to run out and use the bathroom because I didn't think I had to go before class, and 3/4 of the way through, yeah. So that's my first bit of advice. I know it's silly, but that's the first thing I tell everyone. The other thing is have a backup plan for the music because technology can fail us. Lost my voice a couple weeks ago because I couldn't get the microphone to turn on no matter what I did. It became a joke that like on Thursdays the microphone doesn't work. Any other day of the week, it comes right on, no problems at all. So you give yourself extra time. Make sure that your music connects. If you're using a microphone that's hooked up properly, you've got your levels. Sometimes I get everything set up. I get talking to a participant, but I never check that the level of the music and the volume of the microphone together work. So I turn around, I start the class, we get into our first deadlift, and I'm like, oh, I can't hear the music at all. Always make sure like everything is set, and then you have some time to collect yourself and greet your people as they're coming in.
That's great. And I love the idea of peeing first. I mean, that's why I asked the question. I would have never thought about that.
I wouldn't have either until I had to run out of class that one time.
If we switch gears and we talk about you as a personal trainer, is there a special niche of individuals you work with, or do you work with everybody?
I work with everybody, but my two special areas that I feel the most knowledgeable on are working with seniors and TRX.
Nice. Yeah. And I've seen you working with TRX at the Y. Very good. Yeah.
It's like my favorite
I'm
thing.
like, no, it's good because it's been a while since I've used TRX myself, and I've seen you doing it a few times. I'm like, oh, I forgot you could do that, or I didn't know you could do that with a TRX. Same question as with the group fitness instructor. Do you remember your very first personal trainer client?
Yes, I do. I felt very, very unprepared. I was a young mom. She had a bit of weight to lose, and she just wanted to learn what to do. Like, she just signed up for 2 sessions. Just show me what to do, and I'll do it on my own time.
Is there anything you wish you'd done different than if you could go back and tell yourself, they do this, don't do that?
I wish I had seen some personal training sessions in action first. Because I went into it like I have absolutely no idea like how people handle it. You know, I recently had one of my participants become a trainer, and she asked me how I got into it. And I was like, why don't you come shadow me? I'll talk to my clients and see who's willing to do that. And I had one client who was like, yes, let's do that. I want to help someone else get into this for you. That would be awesome. And she just came with us from machine to machine, and, you know, we talked about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I wish I had thought to ask another trainer if I could do that when I was first starting out.
I think shadowing other trainers is the best thing to do. And I don't know why it's not done more. Again, I would hope that gyms would have a protocol in place for a trainer, whether it's their first time, you know, as a personal trainer, or whether they're a seasoned personal trainer, you know, shadow somebody who's been doing this for a while and get an idea of what's going on, get the lay of the land. I'm glad your client, now personal trainer, coworker is doing that. I think that's phenomenal. So you've worked with many people as a personal trainer. Is there a moment or a client or a win that stands out? You're like, yeah, I really made a difference in this person's life, and what happened?
Can I share 4 stories?
As many as you want.
Okay, first of all, I have a client who she's in her late 60s, and she is getting so much stronger every single session. It's so rewarding. But one Thursday evening, I walked over to the leg press and I put the pin in 100 and I said, we are trying this tonight. And she said, oh, Amanda, that's 3 digits. And I said, yep. And I know you can do it. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, I have faith in you. She knocked it out of the park, 3 sets of 12 at 100 pounds. And she was so excited that when I was running up front to meet my next clients, I ran by the front desk and I said, my client did 100 pounds on the leg press. And she goes, oh, I know. She told everyone in the lobby. So I was so proud of her. And then I have another client. She's a breast cancer survivor. And she's got major swelling in her arm and gets a lot of pain in her side a lot. And I started having her do tricep overhead extensions just because she said she wanted to tighten that up. It took away all the pain on the side of her body. So, and like every single exercise we do, anything that involves twisting or lifting up, she's like, that pain is gone. And anytime it comes back, I just do those exercises you showed me. And she's another one that like every week we're going up in weight. We're doing something a little more complicated. Her balance has improved greatly. And it's so validating when you see people like making huge strides like that. My other 2 stories, I have a young woman I trained. She lost 75 pounds in the year that she trained with me. And then she signed up for half-hour sessions, and she was like, show me a workout. I'll stay for another half hour and do it on my own time. So that way you're not paying for the full hour, but you're exercising for a full hour. And she was back there another 2 times a week doing it on her own, and she put in the work, and the results speak for themselves. And then my last one is my longest running client. I have been training her for almost a decade now. When she came to me, she knew she was on the verge of needing a shoulder replacement. And she was in physical therapy, and her physical therapist would send me notes like, don't let her do this exercise, focus on strengthening this muscle, and all these guidelines, to the point where she loves TRX and all she wants to do is TRX. And we weren't allowed to do Superman or a row because of the stress on her shoulder. So we would do static exercises where we would just like hold the straps and do some scapular retraction. We did a lot of static shoulder work, which is pressing into the straps. When she did end up needing that shoulder replacement, and the doctor said when he went in there, the musculature was so strong that she was going to heal in no time.
What? That's
And
phenomenal.
she did heal very quickly because she kept saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to be back where I was," and she's doing everything.
That's terrific. Wow, you're making a difference. That's wonderful. Sometimes being a personal trainer, sometimes people look at it as a glamorous profession. Do you have it? And I have a different theory on that.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any weird or funny stories from when you were doing personal training, without naming names, obviously, that you've experienced or seen?
I can't think of anything weird in the way that I think you mean the question, but I do have a funny story.
Okay.
I have an older gentleman I was training before the pandemic, and he wanted to work on planks. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do 30 whole seconds." And I was like, "Well, I'll get down here with you. I'll get the stopwatch going. I'll let you know every 10 seconds, right?" 30 seconds goes by, and he's like, "I'm going to keep holding it." Another 30 seconds goes by. I'm going to keep holding it. He did a 2.5 minute plank. He'd been practicing at home and was trying to act like he wasn't going to be able to. Yeah.
That's a pretty good story. Yeah, the craziest story I've ever heard of is ones where a personal trainer, and this is not a great story, it's kind of an embarrassing story, but a personal trainer put someone on a leg press and they were pressing whatever it is, I don't know how much weight, and the person actually had an accident.
Ooh.
Number two. So yeah,
No.
yes. So yeah, that's what I was thinking about when I asked the question, because sometimes things like that happen in the gym, and I've heard of these stories. I thought maybe you've seen something. Hopefully nobody ever experiences anything like that in the real world.
No, the worst is that yoga will make you pass gas.
Yeah. How do you keep your clients motivated long term? You've had a client for 10 years, which is fantastic. How do you keep them, coming back for more and staying fit over time?
I feel a little bit like I am part trainer, part therapist. So like these clients that I've had for long periods of time, like we've become close, and they're seeing over a time like that, it's because you're seeing the results. You're not just signing up to hang out with me for an hour. I feel like it's harder to keep clients motivated in the short term when they're just starting out and they're not seeing the results yet. And for that client in particular, right before leading up to her surgery, when she was getting more limited, she was getting really depressed. And I kept saying, and she's had a couple surgeries, so I kept saying, like, we've been here before. Don't you remember I told you that, like, the comeback's going to be greater than the setback? We're going to get there. We're going to get back to where we are. Like, you care about these people, and they're really upset. And, or even with, when it's not like medically serious, like if you've hit a plateau and you're doing all the right things and you've changed your diet and you're like, what more can I do? Trying to keep somebody motivated through that is really challenging. I have one client, she was plateaued off for a while, and I was like, you're doing the right things. Keep doing what you're doing. The plateau is going to break, and it did.
So patience. Patience is a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
You work with a lot of people and you teach a lot of classes. How do you balance Amanda time versus time for everybody else? How do you do that work you time balance?
I don't have balance. I come home, my husband and I try to watch TV, and I'm asleep. I crash when I get home. So I try to I try to keep my Sundays free. So unless a client needs to reschedule, I do have one full rest day where I'm not doing anything.
Last question, what advice would you give for somebody who wants to get into the fitness business, who's watching you right now and saying, that sounds like a lot of fun, I want to do it. What's my first steps? What should I be thinking about to make this happen for the real world?
Definitely make sure when you start out you have another job or you have a partner who's working, because you're not going to jump right into a 20 client roster. So I had one client when I started, in addition to my group fitness classes. When I started teaching group fitness, I had one class. I tried to do my own class where I rented out a space, and I ended up losing money on that because I wasn't bringing in enough people to make up for what I owed for the space. So when you start out, you have to have a safety net You can't just quit your job and start personal training. But in terms of getting into it, having a good certification, what I talked about earlier with shadowing someone, I think that's great. So you understand the structure of a session and talk to some people who are in the business already and ask at your gym if they're hiring trainers. Because the why was my gym where I took my now 18-year-old son to water babies class when he was 6 months old. So I've been going there and working out there. That's how I lost the almost 70 pounds that I lost. I took the group exercise classes there. I couldn't afford a personal trainer. So I learned everything. Shout out to my boss, Cindy. I learned most of what I know from her body pump class and her circuit class that she used to teach on Monday nights. I went to classes religiously. I learned everything I could, and then I went into the gym and took what I learned and did it on my own.
The why basically changed your life.
Absolutely.
That's terrific. Wow. And I think that's great advice. Ask your local gym if they're hiring personal trainers, get certified, be a sponge for knowledge and learn as much as you can, either before getting certified and during and even after certification. I mean, me too. I'm constantly reading. So, learning never ends. You have to continue to learn.
I spent so much time on YouTube watching Bob and Brad. Do you know them?
Yeah, I know.
The most famous physical therapists on the internet. I love them. They crack me up. But I watch all of their videos for ideas for exercises for my senior classes.
It's wonderful. I think watching YouTube videos, I call it YouTube University, I think is a great thing to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's so much out there available to us now that wasn't just a little while ago, that you're never at a loss for new exercises. And in fact, my son, he gets an app with all the exercises he has to do for college football coming up. And yesterday, obviously, the gyms were closed. So we grabbed all the weight equipment we have at home. And he was like, Mom, what's a Z press? And I was like, I've never done a Z press. What is that? It's a seated overhead barbell press. I don't know why they had to give it such a complicated name. They could have called it what it is. But we just went right on YouTube. It popped up right away. And he figured out everything he needed to know because not every exercise had a video. I'm assuming that there needs to be the shape of a letter Z in the exercise somehow, right? When literally you're just sitting, if anything, it's an L press because you're sitting like a letter L. And then you're doing an overhead press with the barbell. I'm like, that is a not good name for that exercise.
It's right up there with air squat, which
yes.
If your feet don't leave the floor, it's a body weight squat.
Right. It's just a squat. There's no air.
Amanda Collins, this has been a terrific conversation. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any closing thoughts or words of wisdom for people?
I think if you're thinking about getting into the fitness industry, do it. It's worth it. Can I also share why I started? Okay.
Please.
It's sad. It might make people cry. I lost my daughter at birth 15 years ago, and I discovered Zumba 2 weeks before I had her. And it was the most fun I ever had in my life. And my midwife told me to get back in that Zumba class as fast as I possibly could. And it was the only thing, on top of grief counseling and going to church and all the other things I was doing to try to get through, it was the only thing that helped me feel better. And I remember every instructor that I had in that time, that they didn't know me or my story, but I felt like they were pouring all of their energy into me, and it gave me my life back. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to make other people feel like life was worth it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. Amanda, it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time and your honesty, and I know you're going to continue to make a difference at the Y and wherever else you go.
Thank you.